If your story doesn't suit you, change it. We all have a history, a story of our past, which we believe is what led us to where we are in life. Everything's a choice. Did we go to college after high school? Did we join the military or go to work instead? Did we travel? Did we get married to our high school sweetheart? Whatever the case, everyone's got a story. But what if I told you that the story about your past that you believe is firmly set in stone was actually malleable? Because we are consciousness, which is God, we have the divine authority to choose which story we prefer to have experienced in the past. I know that sounds crazy, but quantum theory has begun to back up these claims. And suddenly, things like a multiverse isn't so far fetched or a plot device in a movie. I've spoken a lot about how the imagination is a divine playground and it's where our dreams come true in every now or present moment, that we choose to go within and we experience whatever it is we want. That happens every now moment, every present moment, whenever you do that. So when you continue to focus on those imaginal acts and you put your awareness on them continually, you're going to experience that in your reality. And please, I'm only going to say this the one time. Let's let go of those snarky and immature comments about what if I wanted to grow wings and fly that I've seen or read on other channels. Honestly, that nonsense makes me roll my eyes, because what if what we had was a childhood that was full of lack? And I'm trying to be as real here as possible. And what if what we experienced was something that was traumatic for us? It was abuse or whatever. Then those experiences would continue on in that timeline. But you can drop identifying with them, because when we identify with something, in essence, we are permitting whatever we're identifying with to continue to be part of who we are. We're ultimately the ones who are in charge of that as source, as cause. 3D is the effect. It's reflecting, it's a mirror, it's reflecting back to us who we believe we are. Who are we identifying as? So when we start to contemplate, okay, this is what I experienced in this current version of me, this past, that's what I identified with, and I don't want to identify as that anymore, as someone who went through these difficult, horrific things before. Did you know that you can continue to let them exist without ever again giving them any more of your attention? And the reason why is because creation is finished. That means that all realities exist. When do they exist? They exist now, in every present moment that you select, you as consciousness, decide to put your awareness on those moments. What if this happened instead? Other channels, plenty of people, Neville Goddard himself, he coined revision, I believe. At least I only first heard it from him, and then other people were talking about it. But the originator of the principle of revision came from Neville Goddard. And revision is not necessarily about changing the past. It is about changing your memory of that past. And the reason why you're able to do this is because of the fact that all of creation is finished. That means that all outcomes exist, all past experiences exist. Everything exists, because otherwise it wouldn't be possible for it to be a part of the absolute. So essentially what we're doing here is we're making a deal with ourselves. and not anybody else in our 3D. We are, in essence, ridding ourselves of those past painful memories. And by doing so, we're changing our association with that memory. Because at the end of the day, what is a memory anyway? It's an imaginal act, right? But every time that you recall a memory, you are also reliving it in the present. That's why Neville referred to that as to not reimagine the past, or to imagine it lovingly, excuse me, because if you reimagine it the way that it happened, where something terrible happened to you, you're reinfecting yourself. Remember, this is always going to be about you. It's always about you. It's not about the other person. It's not even about the circumstance. And I mean this as respectfully as possible. It's not spiritual bypassing. It is not moral relativism. This is about taking your consciousness and putting it on a better memory. Because if you're able to picture it, even if that's not what happened to you, what you experienced or what you perceived as an experience back then, and I'm not calling anybody a liar. I'm saying all of these things because I know it's a tricky subject, it's a touchy one, it's difficult, and I want to be as respectful but also as honest as possible. If creation is finished, if all possibilities exist, if you as source are having the human experience, remember I made a graph example about us existing on the X or horizontal plane, and the Y, which is the vertical, is how we rise in consciousness. Well, the thing is that source, as the absolute, of course, where do you think source is? Source occupies everything on that graph. Everything, the X and the Y. And that is why, because you have a piece of source within you, a piece of God within you, whatever you believe in, that doesn't matter. Whatever word you choose to call it, you have a piece of that within you. That's why you're able to select it, because you've been given the consciousness to do so. You have an imagination that can do that, that can picture a different outcome, a more favorable outcome, or one in which you never even met your abuser, whoever it was that wronged you. There's also other lifetimes where, you were not that person's target or their victim or anything like that. I know how effed up this all sounds and may seem, and that's why I'm saying is I'm trying my best, and I hope that I'm doing it justice, because I know that it is a very difficult and hard subject, and I myself struggled with it for a really, really long time, because we tend to want to hold on to those stories because we feel that somehow the more difficult stories especially have molded and shaped us, and to an extent we kind of feel like we earned those scars as like badges of honor. And what I'm saying is, it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't, because of who you are. So I guess that what I'm trying to say is, if it's not what you want, and if you're, because what happens in your past follows you throughout your life, it doesn't stay in the past. And so if you're finding yourself still getting triggered by things in your 3D that somehow lead back or can be connected in your consciousness to that sort of crap circumstance, if it's not what you want, and if it's not making you happy, then why would you keep doing this to yourself? Here's what I propose. Whenever your mind drifts to an unfavorable event in your past, and that memory invokes a feeling within you, as source, you're calling it into being. And this is what keeps a lot of people trapped in patterns where they re-experience the same kind of circumstances with different people. And then they wonder why it keeps happening. And the cycle seems to be never ending for them. But what if you could contemplate a different outcome? Because you only need two things to do that. Number one is the willingness to be open-minded enough to consider contemplating another outcome, one that would have been favorable to you. And the second thing is I recommend getting as relaxed as you possibly can. Relax your body, because in that relaxation, it doesn't necessarily have to be a state akin to sleep, but you do need to be as relaxed as possible, because that helps you to suspend your disbelief. That's why Neville was such a big, he was really big into the state akin to sleep, because that relaxed, that drowsy state, you are the most impressionable. That's where your consciousness can really make a big impact in your life for what you want to experience. Whereas if we're operating from our very human, very plugged in 3D selves, and we have all of these things competing for our attention, you know, whether it's our phones, our jobs, our families, our special people, significant others, etc., whomever it is, colleagues, friends, we have our attention, our awareness is going in all of these different places. And what I'm saying is, when you can step away from that and relax yourself enough, you're able to suspend your disbelief a lot easier. And it's also easier for you to accept, well, what if I started contemplating this other thing? It's going to be hard. I'm not going to lie. It's going to be hard at first. However, like everything else, we're not born knowing how to do anything. We learn it through practice, through repetition. And I promise that the payoff is certainly worth it. It has been worth it to me. It has completely changed and transformed my life. So, and I know I'm not the only one. You know, we live in a world that is constantly in motion, and we're often called not to just hustle, but we're often told that we must hustle hard. And the law of assumption is all about slowing down and relaxing. And the idea that you can get it all, get everything by doing nothing or almost nothing, it almost seems crazy and preposterous. Now, I've already touched on states in other videos and why your state matters, why who you identify as being is the reason your life looks the way that it does. It's because you're taking certain actions in your world that are based on the identity, who you are identifying as, what your state is. So hopefully you're starting to, at the very least, test the law on small things. But I would also encourage you not to be afraid, and that you start testing it on things that you believe are bigger for you too. Because why not? Why wouldn't you? I'm going to take an example that's familiar with a lot of people, and it's the subject of wealth and financial abundance. Now, a lot of people, especially, I'm in the United States, so here, most of the people that I grew up with had parents who, like mine, taught them that you have to study hard and get a great job so that you can earn enough money to live, or money doesn't grow on trees, or you have to watch your money, and you have to be frugal, and you have to save enough of it away in the future, just in case, because in the future you don't know what's going to happen, and you have to have a nest egg and blah blah blah. The last one, especially about having enough money, you have to have a nest egg, especially as you get older. That one was really hard for me because it sounds like such practical advice. It sounds wise to me as well, right? Because savings accounts that have enough money in them to cover any emergency or like a job loss is just smart, right? But do you see what the problem is here? It's very obvious that from a very young age, we're taught to identify with lack and that there's never enough. And that's simply not true, because your source, whatever you agree with, whatever you consent to as true for you, must be outpictured in your 3D, no matter what that is. So if you believe money is hard to come by, that's what you'll experience. If you think no matter how hard you work, you never have enough, that's what you'll have, not enough. If you believe that you're a hamster on a wheel working just to pay your bills and scraping by, your 3D has no choice but to prove you right. So why don't you change the story? I think another thing that is important for me to mention is the moment you start telling yourself a new money story, in this example, you're instantly on that timeline, because as source, you shift immediately. Even though you're 3D, it takes a hot minute. But what do we do whenever we say, well, I'm source, I declare that, I have enough money. Oh, so now I'm on the timeline. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Let's not lie to ourselves here, folks. We're going to look at our bank accounts and say, well, the money's not here yet. I don't see it. Or we'll look over at the pile of bills that's stacking up and starting to tower over our desks or a table or wherever it is that you keep your bills. And it's so easy to get sucked back into the illusion of the 3D. As crazy as that sounds, as all of this sounds, none of this, your 3D is not actually real, but because you're convinced that it is, you're going to continue to have the same experiences until you change your story and you stick to the new story. That's all that it is. And whatever's happening out here, because you've already decided as source, that's got nothing to do with you anymore. This is all playing out, and you're instantly on that track, no matter what. You continue to tell yourself a new story, it has no choice but to happen. I hope you're understanding what I'm saying here. By the way, if you're not manifesting money and you're manifesting love, it's the same deal, guys, because the story that you have about love is what you're going to experience. I used to believe that I was someone who was unlovable and not good enough, and I was never chosen. And until I became the focal point in my world, and I started telling myself a new story, and that new story consisted of several different things. Here's a few. The fact that I'm very lovable. I'm always chosen. I'm sought after. People regret losing me. My reality continues to prove me right every single time, no matter what. Because when you start to live by the law and you acknowledge to yourself, hey, maybe the way I've been thinking about this particular area isn't serving me. So what if I started thinking differently? You will start seeing evidence of that change almost immediately. But where I think many people go wrong, though, myself included, especially at first, is that we'll place an imaginary condition on ourselves before we'll allow ourselves to have it in our minds, because everything begins in the mind first, as within, so without. And for instance, imaginary conditions that I'm talking about, for instance, when it comes to money, you might tell yourself that, you just need to earn more money so that you could pay off your debts easier and then you could start saving. That one was one of mine, until I realized that no amount of money was ever going to make a dent, a real dent in my world, until I changed my money story. Because my money story used to be that I had to struggle in order to obtain it. But for years now, I've been telling myself the story that all of my needs are met. And somehow, some way, all of my needs are, in fact, met. It's so easy to disregard these principles because they sound too good to be true. They sound like spiritual fluff, but you don't have to take my word or anyone else's word for it. Test it yourself. But remember to also be 100% honest and authentic with yourself, because if and when you start noticing where your mind goes when it comes to a particular area in your life that you wish or you hope was different, and you're able to catch the story that you've been telling yourself for who knows however long, that's a really powerful moment, because that's where you can start to change it because you've identified it. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said that you don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the first step. Well, I'm telling you that placing your awareness on what you want, what you prefer to experience in your life, that's taking the first step in faith. Be honest with yourself, because this story is all about you. The law of assumption is about you. It's not about anyone else. It's not about money, really. It's not about a specific person, a job, or changing any of your unfavorable 3D circumstances. It's about you. Who do you want to be? Then assume that you're already that person and start telling yourself a new story based on who that person's identity is. The new story is going to start reflecting in your reality. And when it does, I can guarantee you it's going to surprise you. One final thing I'd like to share with you is that you're never the story. Just like you're not your thoughts or your feelings, you're not defined by your story, whether it's favorable or unfavorable. Remember, you are consciousness, source, God, the absolute. You're the entire ocean in a drop, as Rumi said. You are therefore more than any story, thought, feeling, or circumstance. You don't have to remain chained to an old story that doesn't suit you anymore. That's not who you want to be anymore, who you want to experience your life as. So start adopting some main character energy for yourself and take back the reins of your life. If there's anything at all you don't like, observe your thoughts on that matter. I personally love scripting. I've kept many, many diaries over the course of my life that have served me not only as the bestest of friends that I've ever had, but they're also a documentation, a history of my experiences, which is why I've also been able to easily pinpoint the reasons why my 3D looks a certain way, why people around me have behaved in ways that I didn't care for. And even after all the years that I've been putting these principles to work in my own life, I still fall out of my favorable state. If any coach tries to tell you that they have all of their shit together, it's not true. We all fall out. All of us do. Any content creator like me who's talking about law of assumption, claiming perfection, not true. We all fall out. That's the human side. I still will have negative experiences in 3D. But what happens to me now is that I'm able to view things with indifference. I can be emotional and I can allow my human side to have that experience and release what I don't like. But then guess what happens? I return back to knowing who the hell I am. Thanks so much for joining me today. I will talk with you again soon.